A big hello from London. An interesting week with some wide-ranging and interesting weekly patterns. In the stock market, we had a weekly key reversal down in the UK FTSE stock index futures last week, which this week has seen attempts to try lower, though these have so far been foiled on a closing basis. Interestingly, at the same time, the French CAC40 stock index futures had a weekly key reversal up last week, but only on the continuous charts. And these have seen, I suppose, a not unsurprising reactionary move lower this week, which ties in with earlier moves lower. We also had a weekly key reversal up in the Egyptian Hermes stock index last week, which also had a somewhat similar fate, having new highs this week, but the closes were barely above last Friday's close, and today looks like it may close lower than Friday, even though we have had a higher high than back then. In the currencies, we had weekly key reversals down in sterling against the rand, which have started to see follow-on moves lower this week. However, we also had weekly key reversals down in US dollar Philippine peso and US dollar Chilean peso, so quite disparate currency pairings, and both these two have seen reactionary moves back up, especially in the US dollar Philippine peso. There are also weekly key reversals down in US dollar Russian ruble spot and the 1-month NDF, if only just on the latter. Over now to spot gold. And we had a somewhat reactionary weekly key reversal up last week after a move lower from mid-April from a pretty good looking bearish late January to start of March bearish shift pitchfork. The tines are highlighted on my daily chart in bright red. The market is still moving within the declining upper tine above, which is currently at 49.88, and the declining middle tine below, currently at 43.99. What is interesting about the immediate vicinity is the presence of the mauve medium moving average, currently at 47.93, and the green short medium moving average, currently 47.83, sitting above the market and capping prices right now. Looking now at fixed income, and we just had the one weekly key reversal here in the markets I follow last week, a weekly key reversal up in the UK Gilt futures, which this week has seen a strong reactionary move back down. With changeover, we are indeed below and outside last week's range, the lowest low and low close since November 1990. So quite some feat. Over now to the commodities, and an interesting dichotomy in the metals, where we had a weekly key reversal up last week in LME 3-month copper, which has seen an excellent follow-on higher this week, such that we are close to testing the 2026 high made back in January at 14,527.5. This came about because the market broke up through a keen resistance, the bright red upper tine, currently at 13,419, of the big old 2009 to 2016 bullish shift pitchfork, a tine that has capped the market more or less until this week. At the same time, we had a contrary weekly key reversal down last week in LME 3-month nickel, which has not headed lower, bar a tiny fraction yesterday, a move which I understand does not fit in well with the run-up since last March. I cover this more fully in my weekly LME base metals video commentary. Let's look at the softs, and we had a weekly key reversal down last week at the low of the market in New York coffee futures, and only in New York coffee futures contract, which this week has seen a strong reactionary move back up, well within last week's range though. On to our last two, we had a weekly key reversal down last week in ICE Dutch TTF gas baseload futures. This one, like many other weekly key reversals seen last week, has had a strong reactionary move back up here, such that though we are still within last week's range, we are moving towards the top end of it. Finally, we had a weekly key reversal down last week in the Baltic Dirty Tanker Index, which has, I think unsurprisingly, given where the market started from, which has had a follow-on lower this week, making the lowest low and lowest close since the start of March. As always, I'm happy to answer any direct questions with anyone who's interested. With that, I'll finish this section from London, and I hope you found these comments useful.
Thank you for watching and listening. This
weekly broadcast gives the essential market patterns and consequences. Please be aware of the risk disclaimer posted both at the front and at the back of this broadcast. Copyright is Eddie Tofpick and ADM Investor Services International Limited. And here comes the final important bit.